going live here. Here we go.
Feel that.
All right, Mike. Awesome. Hey, good to see you, brother.
Hey, good to see you too.
Yeah, we're talking about entrepreneurship this week. Man, oh man.
Oh yeah, super excited about that.
I know that this is a good place that you've got a lot of passion, right?
Yeah. Been thinking about it a lot and talking about it a lot today too. So
yeah. Well, Hey, folks, thanks for coming to another edition of Dad's Huddle. This is where we take on some issues that are particularly dealing with boys of color, black boys, but really just kids in general. And so today we're talking about entrepreneurship. And so for those that do not know Mike, I encourage you all to get to his website, yatesmike.com. You'll see more of what he does and how this guy is really changing the game. And so really honored to be part of the conversation with him. So Mike, thanks for the conversation and the time today. All right. I'm going to start you with a question.
Okay.
What is entrepreneurship?
Ooh, that's interesting. An interesting question. So to me, entrepreneurship is, it's the journey that you go through and the identity that you assume as you try to solve some large problem. So
the journey you go through.
I think that's what it is.
And the problems that you overcome. Is that what you said?
The journey you go through on your way to, the problems that you overcome on your way to solving some sort of problem for the world or for yourself.
So I have several questions and several comments and discussion points that I hope we can touch on today. The first one is this question of really what is entrepreneurship? My sense is that when people think of entrepreneurship, they think of somebody they think of Elon Musk, right? They think of, Jeff Bezos. Those are entrepreneurs. I don't think they think about other people. And I think that's part of the culture. What do you think of that?
I mean, I'd actually argue that those guys they've sort of aged out of the entrepreneur. Like they're now operating a massive business, and right. So I don't think of that's so funny because I don't think of Elon Musk as an entrepreneur anymore as much as I think of him as a CEO, because not all entrepreneurs are CEOs, and vice versa.
Yeah.
And so like the skill set that he has to engage with every day is really different than your typical like early stage entrepreneur. So
true that. Yes, and but why? So when we think of entrepreneurs, though, I talked to a young person and who's an entrepreneur, those names come up. The guy who's on the corner who's got a barbecue stand, who's making good money, by the way. My father-in-law had a barbecue stand, and for years I was like, man, I'm going to take that thing over. He's making really good money, hard work. But he's an entrepreneur. What are some other entrepreneurs? Who do you think of when you think of entrepreneur, Mike? Specifically.
I actually think of a lot of friends of mine, like people who are either good friends or becoming friends. Like, I think of Julia Dexter, who is the founder and CEO of Shoelace Learning, one of the greatest entrepreneurs I know. I think of my guy John Henry, who like every time I've had a conversation with him in person, it's incredible because he just like he defaults to building business for fun, like in his mind. So like if you mention an idea, he's like, oh, here's how you can monetize it. Like, here's how you're going to build the team. Like, here's,
Yeah.
So I think of those people, but I also think of street hustlers, like the people that I grew up knowing, like that. I mean, that was very much so me. I was a hustler who had the right set of experiences, where I learned how to build businesses and build schools. So I think about that too, like all the kids who are like selling candy out of their locker, like that's entrepreneurship. I think of single moms, like
yeah, buddy. So you remember? So I don't know if you remember this, but here's a quick story for the folks that are listening. In September, my wife and I went to Galveston, Texas. It's kind of a resort town here in Texas, and we were sitting out at a coffee shop. and these two black kids, ages 10 and 11, came to us. Did I tell you about this story?
No.
Yeah. So they were selling candy, and this was a Friday afternoon. Maybe it was a Saturday. No, it was a Saturday morning. So they're selling candy. I told them I didn't want to eat candy, and then they sent them on their way. They came walking back by, and I paused them. I said, "Guys, what are you guys out here doing? What are you trying to do?" And they said, we're trying to make some money for the family. And I'm like, "Oh, so you want to be an entrepreneur? Why are you selling candy?" Because everybody likes candy. And it's like, "No, I don't like candy. And in fact, look around here. Look at all these middle-aged and older folks. Do you think they like candy?" And then I said, "How do you know?" And they quickly said, "Oh, we got to ask them. We got to ask them." They went and started asking at different tables, "What kind of things would you like if we were selling it? What would you like?" There was a guy at the next table who had a dog, and he said he wanted dog treats and water for his dog, and on it went. These two young men, I said, young boys, because they're 10 and 11. Let's be honest, they're boys. Right. I said, "Here's my number. Have your mother call me. Please, please, please have your mother call me." Never heard back from them, right? Mm-hmm. But these guys had such energy, such drive, such gumption, and I can promise you that they were not doing well in the traditional school. So these kids were actually entrepreneurs at 10 and 11, but they had nobody to support their journey, and it was a really sad. But it also got me on this conversation about, like, what are we doing where we're to grow young men like this who can become entrepreneurs, who can take that energy and direct it and get coaching and et cetera. So I know you're involved with a lot of entrepreneurship stuff. Tell us a little bit about some of the things you're working on, Mike.
Yeah, I get to help advise this startup called Socialpreneur Lab, which to me is one of the greatest like programs to help a child start building business. Founder's incredible. Highly recommend looking them up. Website will probably go through a facelift here soon, but
what's the name of it again?
From Socialpreneur Lab. I will put the link. I can drop it in the chat.
Okay, I'll take a look at it.
.org. But yeah, .org. Yep.
Found it. Yep.
So basically helps young people, not only like start a business but make their first $1,000, and putting all the supports around them, whether it be banking, coaching, whatever it may be. So there's that. I just got done talking to a friend of mine who I'm gonna do some work with, who is he's potentially thinking of doing something after the university where he works, where he is going to build summer programming for young Black youth who want to become entrepreneurs, or who don't know, but but there's like a skill set and opportunity there waiting for them. Yeah. He wants to do something that's really ambitious that I love, where he wants to build like almost like a student endowment fund, where like the businesses that get launched within the program can contribute a certain dollar amount to the fund, to where the program funds going. Other. Yeah. So
love that. Tell me more about the Socialpreneur Lab.
Yeah. So Socialpreneur Lab they have an entrepreneurship curriculum. They're going direct to consumer, which I'm really excited about.
Bingo.
So Jamila's she was working with school districts where she was, coming to the school, leading a certain amount of time, and then decided, you know what, I'm not even going to raise money anymore. I'm just going to go direct to consumer. I'm going to bootstrap the business, which I'm very much in favor of and really excited about.
Agreed.
So now that we're looking at cohort-based style learning. So.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, just real quick, want to welcome those that are joining us. Everett, hey man, good to see you. Real quick story about Everett, Mike. First time I went live on LinkedIn, it was accidental, and I was sitting here in my without a shirt on, and it was like 6 a.m. thankfully, and Everett was in across the world. I think he's in Shanghai. Happened to be on LinkedIn, and he pinged me and said, "Hey." So, Everett, thank you. Matt, gosh, help me with this last name, Giorgio. I'm not hoping that's right. I know you're involved with entrepreneurship. Thanks for joining. Mike C., he says that entrepreneurs are those kids who are selling those candy bars to Juicy J in his Escalade in the beginning of Poppin'
Huh.
My
Yeah,
Collar.
exactly those kids. Yeah,
Thanks,
I
Mike.
know
See that?
exactly what video you're talking about.
Well, see, I'm too old for that, but thanks for trying to get me schooled up here, Mike C. And then
Yeah.
Alicia, hey, Elisa, good to see you. All right, so here's another question or comment from Elisa. Oh, Noli, yeah, I know you. You're local. Dear friend homeschools his children with a laser focus on entrepreneurship. His kids are amazing. He has no intention of his kids attending college. Now, Mike, respond to uh, Alicia.
I think it's awesome. I mean, like, if I mean, to me, the choice is not hard. It's like if you can generate revenue and income for yourself and not have to pay anyone to do that, then you should do that. So I think that's awesome. The one I guess word of caution is not even about college. It's about I don't think everybody should become an entrepreneur, and I think that it's become a fad because of the prevalence of Gary Vee and Tony
And
Robb, like the
yeah, Shark Tank.
like oh yeah, Shark Tank. I mean,
Yeah.
like I spent 3.5 years working with a shark, like working with a Silicon Valley billionaire, and we built something incredible together. But I always tell people, like, you have to understand, like to our earlier conversation, like Elon Musk is not like the rest of us, and to you can so I think being a successful entrepreneur looks a lot of different ways. Number one. Number two, not everybody needs to be the CEO. You
Yes.
don't have to be the CEO to be an entrepreneur, and you should really think about whether you want to do it at all.
So here's when we started this conversation, I started by asking what is an entrepreneur, and some folks, gave some responses to that. What I think is the challenge, Mike, is when we say, these kids want to be entrepreneurs. What I'm talking about is to think like an entrepreneur, right? So I would say that every person can and must become an entrepreneurial thinker, not
Yeah, absolutely.
necessarily working and earning all their income from an entrepreneurial venture. They're two different things.
Right.
So,
Yep.
and again, if we think about kind of redefining the term entrepreneurship, that to me is actually one of the first keys. If we can stop thinking of the entrepreneur as, again, Elon or somebody who is making millions of dollars from their entrepreneurial venture, but someone really who constantly is thinking about solving problems and creating value, that is the distinction. And whether you work for a company, whether you work for yourself, where you got a side hustle, if you can think and solve problems without somebody looking over your shoulder, then I would argue you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah,
What do you think?
absolutely. I mean, I think I think the entrepreneurial mindset, I think, is really important, and that's the thing I think should be taught everywhere. My argument is that almost everybody, like, if you don't run your own company, you should have a side hustle,
Yes.
just because, like, we're seeing from not large nonprofits to very established tech companies. We're seeing right now they're just laying people off,
Yeah.
and I am a person who always believes you have multiple streams of income, and I believe that you should have a side hustle at almost all times, because you should never be loyal to a job,
Because
right?
the
Like,
job will never be loyal to you.
exactly. So, like,
Right.
they're not worried. At the end of the day, they've got to reduce whatever amount of spending that they've been told to reduce.
Right.
So
And you're gone.
yeah, at one point I had a natural hair care business on the side. Like, I do consulting, whatever. I've always got something. So I do desire for, like, most people to have that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the traditional, like, what most people think of as an entrepreneur is, like, totally different.
Yep. So Nicholas Walton writes that entrepreneurs are creative thinkers. Again, that's actually part of that entrepreneurial mindset. They're constantly thinking about how can I improve this? How can I change this? Which to me, back to the conversation about school, Mike, which we always lead with, school
Yeah.
teaches a set of skills that are almost the opposite of an entrepreneurial mindset, right?
Yeah.
Nicholas says, "Amen to that." I'm with you on that one, brother. Yeah, solving problems. Oh, okay. Mike C's got some thoughts on solving problems as an entrepreneurial mindset. Would love to hear more about that, Mike C. So, in a school, failure is to be avoided at all costs, right? Creativity is you really don't have any space to be creative because you're told exactly what to learn, when to learn it, when to turn things in, how it should be, how many words in the paper, etc. Right? So have you seen environments in a school setting where this works well?
But they're typically like, well, I've seen like there used to be in Round Rock ISD in Austin, Texas. There used to be a center for entrepreneurship inside of this high school, that was exceptionally well run, I thought. And sort of like it was kind of like a prestigious thing at the school to be a part of this. So I thought it was really well run. I've not seen a lot of it happen in traditional schooling.
Yeah.
I think like in alternative schools or in independent schools, there's quite a lot of room for this because the school structure allows for it.
Yeah.
Um, we built a school in Fort Worth called Freedom School of Arts and Entrepreneurship. When I say we, I was like on the board of this school, helping like the founding board, so really helping to shape what the school would become. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
ooh, that's a good comment.
Yeah, no kidding. That's exactly right. Thank you for that. My sense is that when I have seen it in a traditional school model, it's a small fraction of the educational experience, right? So it's maybe one
Yeah,
class or one semester of a class. Maybe it's a
yep,
club, but again, 90% of the oxygen is consumed by what I would argue is a a consumption type of education where you just swallow as much of the information as they give you, and
hmm,
then of course regurgitate it for the test.
yeah. And it's never a real commitment, right? Like it's always attached to one teacher who cares about it, and then when that teacher leaves, the program's gone,
Yep,
right? So
yep, yep, yep. So Cheyenne has a good comment here about this streams of income here. Let me see if I can bring her comment on. Y'all, thanks for joining us, and also do this. For a couple of y'all, if you want, we can bring you on and have you a part of the conversation in video if you'd like to join us. We did that last time, Mike, I think. So here's Cheyenne's comment. So true. Always need additional streams of income because even if you are a high producer at a job, doesn't mean your job is secure. Thank you. Let me tell you this quick story, Mike. I was working at a large hospital. This was 20. This is when I had hair, so it's been a while. And I was part of the leadership, and the leadership was super. I mean, we're spending money like it was just water, but all the finances suggested that we were going to have a really hard time, and we started hearing conversations at the upper levels about we're going to need to start laying off folks. At the same time, there were some trips planned with the leadership, to go into, I think it was Wyoming for, a big retreat, which was going to cost, I don't know, close to $100,000. And I knew there were a couple, I knew I was going to get pressure to release a couple folks. In fact, I had to terminate 3 people just because of financial pressures, not because they were doing a bad job, but just financial pressures that came down. And the discrepancy there for me was in executive leadership conversations, they were always going to eat first, and the lower folks, they were going to eat last. And when the decision came to cut, they were gone, and regardless of kind of the dollars that could be saved in other ways. And so that was the first time that I was like, that really, really doesn't feel great. And when I started realizing, to Cheyenne's point, it's, I got to make sure I've got back options, etc.
yeah,
Okay, so let me go to some of these comments here. Most schools that Matt Giorgio, I think that's, again, hopefully I'm saying that right. Most schools that teach entrepreneurship do business plan development, which is the wrong way to teach entrepreneurship. So Matt's a guy, Mike, that I'd like to do a LinkedIn Live with him because he does a lot of stuff with entrepreneurship and using games. And Matt, if you'd be up for joining us, I'd love to hear a little bit more about the work. And I know, Mike, you've been involved with some game kind of stuff too, haven't you?
yeah. I don't know, and I would love it if to have Matt on too, because I don't know if I would say business plan development is the wrong way. Maybe it is the wrong entry point.
Yeah.
Um, but again, like for a lot of schools, it's the best they can do because in a lot of cases, like the person who's teaching the entrepreneurship class is probably not actually started a business before.
Right. Right.
And so they're reaching for a curriculum a lot of the time. So yeah, I would say it's not necessarily the wrong place because something's better than nothing.
Well,
But
look,
I
I'm going to
do
invite.
agree
Yeah, I'm going to
generally.
invite Mike or Matt in to this
Good.
conversation. Matt, I'm just putting the link. Just click that when you see it, and then you'll come into the studio. Other thoughts from folks. Everett Hill says, let me bring it up. Guys, thanks for the comments. This is obviously a conversation that is resonating with a lot of folks, and well, it should. So, Matt Barnes, this is something I have to revision. My time and energy right now are focused on doing my job well. First year in my job and struggling with that role. Hope I'm not. Let me go ahead and pull that off. um, yeah. So essentially, the question I asked was, what are folks thinking about in order to kind of create their back pocket option? What are the things looking like? And that was some of his response. So anyway,
Yeah.
Matt, join us when you can. Mike, tell me any stories about your entrepreneurial journey, how you moved from being a
Yeah.
teacher into this space now?
Yeah. I'll even say this. I was going to suggest, or even say this for Everett. It's like, for most people, if you're like, well, I don't know what side hustle I would go for. If you don't have an idea, then treat LinkedIn like your side hustle. Like you build a platform on LinkedIn, and you won't be bulletproof because no one is, but you will find it really hard to be out of work when you can show up at a conference in a field that you care about and people know who you are. Like that's why I'm typically unafraid to lose my job. But in terms of side hustles for me, what's up, other Matt? Two Matts.
Yeah.
But for me, in terms of side hustles, when I was a teacher, I was tired of being broke, and I had a friend who gave me this opportunity to write and to create videos, like viral videos, for this blog called We Are Teachers, and we grew the blog from 2,000 Facebook followers to over 2 million, with just me making stupid videos and like writing funny articles. And that was the first time that I really like saw outside of my like high school sneaker and candy hustling days that like
Yeah.
having something on the side. So launched a natural hair care business because I have a wife who is natural and I had two daughters, and I was sick of paying the prices for hair, and I was like, I can make this stuff myself. So me and YouTube, and when I started shipping stuff to Canada was where I was like, oh, this is real.
Wow.
Like, oh, so I'm bringing that business back, by the way. Like we bring it
Nice.
back in the next couple months. So
Well, you got
yeah,
hair.
yeah,
You can bring it back. I'm not a I'm
that's
not
right.
a I'm not credible in the hair care business. Hey Matt, nice to meet you, man. Thanks for
Hey,
joining us.
Matt.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I hope you're hearing me okay. My microphone here.
We are. Where are you connecting from?
Awesome. I'm in Nova Scotia, Canada, on the
Fantastic.
East Coast of Canada. Yes,
Awesome.
sir. Yeah,
That's where
yeah.
Julia, who I mentioned earlier, that's where Julia's at. She's in Nova
Oh,
Scotia.
is that right? Wow,
All
wow.
right.
Well, I
Small
appreciate
world.
you guys connecting me. I mean, entrepreneurship education is something that I've been involved with for over 20 years, and there's lots of opinions about
So
it.
give me some of
Yeah.
yours. Give me some of your opinions, Matt.
Yeah.
Well, from my experience, I believe that entrepreneurs, first of all, you can't find an entrepreneur. It's like finding a needle in a haystack. You have to let entrepreneurs discover themselves. And how does an entrepreneur discover themselves? They discover themselves through the experiences of their lives. So if we want to facilitate entrepreneurship, we actually have to facilitate experiences that help people uncover and discover the skills and their propensities and, their interests. As Mike was
Love
saying,
that.
Mike, you were giving the example of your side hustle, right? It kind of came about through the experiences of your life, from a personal need through your family, but also some of your experiences that you had. And I think really that's how we create entrepreneurs. And there's always this discussion about, are entrepreneurs born or are they raised? And I actually I wrote an article about this a while ago. It's almost like sports. Yes, there are certain athletes who have, certain characteristics about their body shape and so on that makes them better at becoming athletes. But you also have, 5'3" Muggsy Bogues, who's 14 years in the NBA, right? So it's it's not really a born thing. It's really through the experiences of people's lives, for sure.
Well,
That's good.
yeah. So tell me a little bit about your work, Matt. I remember looking at your LinkedIn profile and going, I want to learn more about what you're up to. Again, there was some element of games and using games to teach entrepreneurship. I think, is that right?
That's right. So for the past 20 years, I've been designing very realistic business simulations, very much like a pilot learns to fly an airplane in a flight simulator, and it recreates flight, recreates the airplane experience. We develop very realistic simulations to allow people to actually run businesses. Because my belief, I started my career as an engineer, programmer, and eventually started my own business shortly out of school. And I didn't have any business background at all. And I just discovered that, to learn business, you have to experience it.
Yeah.
You can talk about it all you want. You can go on as many field trips as you want. And I actually liken it. The example one example I use is from my background as an engineer, in engineering and math. The difference between engineering and math and business is that engineering and math is really difficult to understand for most people. Business concepts are not hard to understand. If you
Right.
sit with anybody and
Right.
just explain basically, it's not hard. But here's the challenge. With math and physics, once you know the formula, you're always going to get the right answer. Whereas business, you never know the right answer. It
Right.
doesn't matter how much experience you have, doesn't matter if you've done it before, you never quite know what's going to happen. Even when you're successful, you don't know if you made the right decisions, because maybe you would have been even more successful if you made slightly different decisions. And I think that's the trap that a lot of people come into. And you guys were talking earlier, Mike, I think you were mentioning, Gary Vee and some of these other guys who try, I don't think they're doing it maliciously, but they're making it sound like entrepreneurship and self-employment is easier than it really is.
Yes.
Right.
That's
And
right.
Yeah.
That's the danger.
the concepts are not hard. They're not hard, but actually becoming profitable, doing it profitably, that's
Super hard.
really, really
Super
hard.
hard.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Mike, you're going to say?
No, I was just agreeing. I mean, the the if there's media that I can suggest that people watch, there's a show on Vice, and just saying one of the other people that I mentioned, John Henry, he has this show where he was trying to challenge some of that, and he shows himself losing $100,000 on a real estate deal because he was busy doing something else and didn't make the call. and I was sitting down talking with him once, and I was like, why'd you put that in there? And he's like, dude, people need to know. People need to know that sometimes you miss the flight and sometimes you miss the call, and when that happens, the money doesn't show up, right? And so it's it's called Hustle. So everybody should watch that show.
Interesting. That reminds me, Mike, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, Matt, and then we're going to bring a couple other folks in. But we've been doing this Youth Entrepreneur Award deal, where we're trying to upvote the idea that entrepreneurship is the best learning platform, not necessarily the best way to make a living, but it's the best learning platform. And of the three semifinalists we interviewed, the first four semifinalists we interviewed, three of them got taken. They got hustled. They got scammed, but each one was like, "Ooh, man! I walked into that deal and I got my clock clean. Thankfully, I was able to get my money back or some of it or something like that. But it caused them to be much more critical and skeptical about any sort of business dealing, which I think is a fantastic skill, right? It's a huge learning opportunity. That may be the most important learning opportunity they might have gone through. And so,
100%.
anyway, so
that actually reminds me of
yeah.
this. Just real quick, I used to run this eBay flipping workshop because I was at a school where people were like, we want to teach kids financial literacy. And I was like, well, you can't be financially literate if you don't have any money. So we started flipping stuff on eBay, and the kids that learned the most were the kids that got scammed right away, where they were like, I had this item, I thought it was valuable, and somebody scammed me on eBay. So it just made me think of that.
Hey, Matt, let me ask you to do two things. Thank you, Mike. Matt, give me your thoughts on this. On Cheyenne's comment, networking is great too, because you can learn from other entrepreneurs what brought them to do what they do now. Your thoughts on that, and then tell us how to get a hold of you and maybe learn more about your work.
Well, there's a saying that I can't remember exactly how it goes, but a smart man learns from his mistakes, or a wise man learns from the mistakes of others, something along that lines, right? So
Love
for
that.
sure, networking and learning from others will help you avoid mistakes. But I still feel at the end of the day, you got to make the decision. You got to be put in a position
Yeah.
to make decisions and suffer the consequences, positive or negative. Learn how to analyze the data. Learn how to learn from failure.
Yeah.
You guys are talking about failure, right? And it's something else I've written about is that school teaches us to fear failure because everything's about avoiding failure. And the real world, I say we fail every day. I call them micro failures. And if I've been in business for 25 years, I've calculated I failed 9,700 times, but I'm still here.
I think I failed that much today, Matt.
Yeah. So I think that's the other thought that I have on that.
Nice. How do we get a hold of you, Matt? What's the best way to, of course, LinkedIn is one way.
LinkedIn is a great way. I also have my website, which is my last name that you can see here, Giorgio.com. And you did pronounce it correct.
Right.
Giorgio is the easy way. It's Greek. The Greek way is too hard to say, so I just say Giorgio because everybody knows Giorgio Armani and that kind of thing. So
there you go.
Easy way to remember it. Yeah.
Good deal. All right. Well, listen, man, thanks for joining us today and for your comments and for the work you do. Really, really appreciate reading your stuff. Awesome. Matt, take care of yourself, or Matthew, take care of yourself. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Matt.
Okay. You know what, Mike? Part of this deal is also now we have a connection in Nova Scotia.
So, yeah, I know. Hey, Nova Scotia, I've not been there, but I've seen photos. It's beautiful there.
Yeah,
so
I'm going to visit now. I've got a contact. I'm sure he's got an extra bedroom someplace.
Yeah.
All right. So Matt C., come on in if you want to join the conversation. Welcome to. Okay, Matt or Mike, here are a couple other questions that I was thinking about as we were preparing for this meeting. Was Martin Luther King an entrepreneur?
You know where
I'm going with this.
Yeah.
It's a leading question.
Yeah. I mean, I think you'd have to say yes. Like if you think about, think about the mind of a person who creates a movement, or even if there are people that argue that Dr. King didn't actually create the movement, but even he was the face of it. Mm-hmm. And so I think absolutely you can argue that, but also let's just pretend that the civil rights movement did not happen. Mm. As the pastor of a church, that makes you an entrepreneur.
Absolutely. And for good and bad, I'm very close. I'm very involved in the Christian church, and there's a lot of hustles, pastors who are hustling people who are not providing the kind of leadership. But that's a conversation for another time. I think Martin Luther King was a social entrepreneur. And again, when I think about growing this term of entrepreneurship, it's problem solving, it's creating value. And so, and creativity is a key part of that. And so part of Martin Luther King's strategy is really how do we problem solve and bring creativity to bear on this problem of injustice. So, hey, we've got another person joining us today here. Let's see. Let's bring you in here. This is not Matt. This is it is Matt. Matt C. Is it Matt or Mike?
No, Mike.
Mike C.
Mike. We've had double the Matts and double the Mikes on this on the show today.
Hey, Mike, how are you, man?
Good. Just enjoying this amazing session right now.
All right, good deal.
Both of you for
I can't hear him. Can you hear him?
Yeah, can you speak up a little bit, Matt? You're coming in a little light.
Okay. That's probably my microphone setting. My bad. Dude, I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate you and Matt putting this together.
Yeah, we're having a hard time hearing you, Mike. Why don't you, if you can join back in with another mic, do so, but we'll probably need to keep moving on. So Mike, what I've interacted with Mike about has been, he's kind of, like, what does his profile say? Like chief fixer or fixer-upper or something like that. But he's a problem solver. And I think problem solvers are always have the entrepreneurial mindset, whether you were a full-time entrepreneur or not. And Mike, just mute me or ping me on LinkedIn again if you've got the mic situation fixed, or just nod if you do. All right, cool. All right, so back to this question of entrepreneurs and again, the difference between school mindset, which is, as Matt or Matthew mentioned reducing the amount of failure as often as possible, really consuming information, not really using it, regurgitation, not really problem solving. It's really doing what you're told. And that, again, is my sense of what the conformity structure happens within a typical educational space. So here's the other question that I want to kind of put to you. When's the best time to experiment with entrepreneurship?
All the time. I think all the
Yeah.
time. I mean, yeah, like I think as soon as a kid can talk,
Yeah.
I think it's time. Like, and when they can read, it's even better, right? So, you know, my youngest kid right now is 4, and he is already starting to understand the idea of an exchange of dollars to do a certain thing. Right. And so like he gets like, I have money, he wants money. So if he does something, then he can get that money. And I think like I want him to know that. And I also want like my 5-year-old and my 7-year-old, my 8-year-old to be more creative about the ways that they go about that, because I want to start my kids really, really young to where this does feel like second nature for them
Right.
when they become older. So
Right.
I think all the time.
Yeah. Mike C., how's your bike? You good?
Testing. Can you hear me now?
I can. Mike, are you able? You're not. It's still
I
kind of
can't hear,
loose.
yeah.
That might be my system actually, but no, we heard Matthew. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm sorry, Mike. I'm not sure if it's a technical issue on my side, but we'll get your comments through the feed.
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, so back to task. So I was thinking the best time to be an entrepreneur or to experiment with being an entrepreneur is between the ages of 0 and 18. Because because you don't have commitments, you don't have real responsibilities, right? There's no expectation that you gotta make money generally, and you know, when you're 30 and you got a family and you've got bills to pay and you're trying to become an entrepreneur, it's 1,000 times more difficult. But when you're 12 or 13, why the heck not, right?
Right. Yeah, like the ability to mitigate risk and to take larger risk.
Yeah.
Like I reckon, like I'm in the category of people that's like, I'm 32, I have 4 kids, and so like I can take a certain amount of risk, but I know that like it's capped. So that's really interesting.
Well, but you've also been setting up the conditions where the risk that you're taking is minimized because you've got a great network. A lot of people know who you are. A lot of people trust you. You've been clearly an advocate for educational change, and a real kind of transparent, honest broker. So I think you've created a brand, right? Let's use that word. That now people
That's
are
right,
like,
personal brand.
I'll risk this guy. I'll work with this guy. I mean,
Yeah.
I've never met you, never set eyes on you face to face, but everything you have written about, I'm like, I just want to be around this brother. So here's Karen's comment. Entrepreneurship without support is not easy. In schools, a lot of people with different levels of expertise are together in one building and can provide support. Mike, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. Like, I think the common thread that I see in a lot of entrepreneurs that I think are really successful, it is about the people that they have around them, right? It's like a friend of mine named Clarence, who's he started this company called Upsy. I love what he said to me the last time we were hanging out. He was like, every entrepreneur needs a person who's in front of them, who knows more than them, who's been where you've been, and they can help pull you along. You need somebody who's behind you, somebody who you can turn around and mentor, show them where you've been.
Yeah.
And then you need people next to you on both sides. And so he's like, you literally need to be surrounded with people to be a successful entrepreneur.
Yeah, my sense is, so again, these young people we've been interviewing in this Youth Entrepreneur Award, they have said, many of them, in fact, I think almost every single one has said that they do not feel encouraged to pursue that path by their friend group. Their friend group almost ridicule them for trying something new, for for stepping off the conveyor belt, for selling jewelry or doing some of the social mission work. I wonder how much of that is if a kid saying, "Gosh, if they do it, then why aren't I doing it too? If they're taking the risk, why aren't I doing it too? Maybe I should try to pull them down, so I don't feel that kind of kind of personal threat." So, Matt also describes a lemonade stand. Have you guys ever heard of Lemonade Day? Have you heard of that, Mike?
Lemonade Day?
Yeah. So there's a nonprofit started here in Houston. In fact, I met with the founder of it just a few weeks ago. It's called Lemonade Day, and so they create this structure. It's lemonadeday.org, I think. It creates this structure where kids can do. Yeah, I'll bring it up here. Lemonadeday.org. Yep. Where kids can create a lemonade stand and talk through the details of how to do that. And my son did it. Actually, one of my daughters did it as well, and it's a great kind of entry point.
Oh, that's cool.
So that's one of again, there's a bunch of programs like this out here, but that's a lemonade stand to me is one of these interesting kind of start pieces. And then Everett talks about there are some great entrepreneurs in the church, and I would argue that's a great community as well for folks to be surrounded by other entrepreneurs. So, okay, another question for you, Mike. Go to my notes here. What have you learned being around youth entrepreneurs? What are some of the lessons you've learned from that?
I mean, I think the biggest thing, one of the biggest things that I've learned is well, I would say number one, the value of starting early, because some of the youth entrepreneurs that I've been around, I have been really inspired by how bold they are to to do something, like to take on something, even if I can see right through what they're building and I'm like, that's not going to work. It is like the amount of boldness that they have to take on something that is larger than themselves, I think is incredible. I think one of the other things that I've learned is it was sort of rooted in that last statement that I said, like it's in very similar to what you said, like the right time to start experimenting is 0 to 18.
Yeah.
And so I think like for a parent, if your kid's interested in entrepreneurship or you're interested in sort of steering them that way, the first or second or third thing that they try doesn't need to be groundbreaking or earth shattering, and it doesn't need to work. Yes. Right. You just want to get them through those reps. And the other thing is I have learned that the best young entrepreneurs often are not passionate about the ones that like really make it big. I have seen in some of the success cases that they're not actually like extremely passionate about the area, but they've had so many reps that they know that this thing is going to work. A great example of this is GatherTown.
Oh,
GatherTown was during the pandemic. It was like a more engaging version of Zoom.
Right. I've used it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You have a great space in Gather, and we had
you've used it too.
Yeah. We've the Reinvention Lab. We had a beautiful space built. We learned that GatherTown was built by college students.
Oh wow!
And we're like, oh. And then when I met the founder, I realized this is not like his greatest passion in the world, but he had so many reps of like building in this cycle that he knew it was going to work. He was like, this is going to hit. This is the right time. Right. So he built that muscle.
Yeah. Well, and he probably also realized the steps that are essential within building anything. Like there are certain pieces that are just kind of really normal process design kind of strategies. By the way, there's a great book I read. It's a little bit wonky, but it's called Disciplined Entrepreneurship. And it really spells out I think it's 24 steps that as you build your company, it just kind of keeps forcing you to ask the right questions and to learn how to get through the next step. And as you get through the next step, you will eventually build something that's been tested and has a chance of working. I found it to be a really helpful structure. But here's Mike C. So Mike C came on and had some problems. I think that was on my side. Again, Mike C, my apologies for not getting you audible here, but here is his concern. He said, so I believe that too much of entrepreneurship mindset type stuff is looked at from a lens of problem solving. That's cool though, because solving problems is extremely important. However, one thing that has worked well for me is not just problem solving, but also capturing potential. Make something cool, even if it doesn't have a purpose yet, just for the sake of doing something cool or awesome. Eventually, you may be able to capitalize on that and solve interesting problems. Now, that is an interesting frame. So
I'm with that. I'm like the make something cool, even if it doesn't have a purpose yet. Man, that is like Mike C. I'm with you. I'm with you there. Like that. One of my largest frustrations. I'm very public about this, so this is like, but like at my day job is that we don't do enough dope stuff just for the sake of doing cool stuff. There always has to be some like, what's the strategic reason? Like, what is the? I'm like, man, we need to do more stuff because it's cool. In a lot of ways, like that can teach you one, like how to build a brand that is different. And great example, great success story of exactly what you're describing here, Mike C, is the it's no longer a company, but it was called Urban Misfit Ventures. Urban Misfit Ventures was four guys, Eric Didier, Quentin Michael Allums, Izzy Lugo, and Brema. These four dudes, they literally created a company around doing weird stuff for the sake of being weird. They ran social experiments,
Right.
They filmed them, and then the city of Milwaukee hired them as a firm to attract more young people to the city.
Interesting. So
Yeah.
it's kind of an emergent opportunities. You start doing something that's cool, and people are like, "Ooh, I wonder if they can do this with this other thing." Right? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, it's like it's almost it's like you build your network through just like focusing on like it's also like how do I knock people on the back foot? How do I get people to think differently? Mischief is probably the best in the world at this.
Mischief. Wait, that's the name of a group?
Yeah, it's a company.
Mischief?
It's a company. MSCHF.xyz. That's the website. They are I'm sure people have seen the big red boots.
Wait,
like
spell
online.
that again. I'll bring it up.
MSCHF.com.
Got it.
So
Interesting.
So basically they create cool weird products and they drop them on a schedule that no one knows.
Whoa.
The big red boots are the latest ones, but the ones that are coming out on April 11th, which I am up to be notified for, are shoes that like when you put them on, they look like they're backwards.
So this is kind of do you know how their story, how they start? Gosh, they got a bunch of stuff in here. Just interesting things.
So like the Eat the Rich popsicles are super funny. I don't know how they got started. Nobody knows where they came from, as far as I know. They just like their claim to fame is that they've gotten sued by Nike a few times because I don't know if you've heard about the when Lil Nas X dropped those shoes that had supposedly had human blood in them. They were
yeah, I'm not in that space,
yeah,
bro.
they had yeah, so he like drops these like shoes that were like altered Air Max 97s, and they allegedly had human blood in them, and Nike was like, whoa, we would never do something like this. We are not Satanists, do not like. And then they went after the brand. Well, before that, the same company, which they found out was the people behind it, they had done what they called the Jesus sneaker, where they put water that was blessed by a Catholic priest so they put like holy water in the shoe. So they do things literally to ruffle the feathers of the American public. Like,
interesting. Well, I'd love to hear more about their story. That sounds really interesting. A couple here comments. Everett says this idea that Mike, you were talking about reps in the cycle. Schools don't provide that. They give you a lot of reps in basic material, not innovative thinking. Students aren't taught to be innovative or create their own brand. And I would argue their own personal brand of who am I, or their brand of something they're trying to build or do. I think there are two brands that could be built or supported. Everett, great point. Thank you for that. Mike C. also talked about Lockheed Martin with their Skunk Works advanced project development team, right? So those are all examples of these places where they're going to just try things that are different and new, not necessarily because there's a marketing or a business venture associated with it. So, all right. So let's see. We've got about 10 minutes or so. Here are 5 things that I wanted to, and we touched on some of them that I think I promised in the intro or in the ad for this, that we would tackle 5 areas of how you can grow an entrepreneur. All right. So if you stay with me, I'm going to do what I thought was maybe some of the 5s. And again, I think other people might add to this, of course. So here's my Canva board. And so as entrepreneurship is the ultimate learning strategy, the first idea I had about how to grow entrepreneurs is to redefine entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And that's where, again, for me, yes, it's critical thinking, problem solving, creativity. But as Mike C. and Mike Yates have said, it's also just creating things just for the fun of it, like, and being public about that. So that's like, to me, a really important one. And again, if entrepreneurship is only running a business and, owning it and making that my full-time venture, then I think it just cuts out a lot of people from beginning the process of exploring. The next one to me is an important one we didn't talk too much about, was getting out of comfort. And so
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, like, Mike, have you ever had or been challenged or challenged some of the young people you're working with to like sell something or to go out and raise money or do something that forces them out of their comfort zone?
Absolutely. This is like one of my specialties as an educator.
Figured.
One of the projects that comes to mind is at the school that we built in Austin called Alpha. It was really close to the University of Texas.
Yeah.
And we basically created these. I remember on college campuses, people would try to sell you things all the time in public spaces. So I was like, well, you guys are going to do that. And they didn't know what they were getting into. So I just handed them these folders, and I had created all these fake businesses. So I created lit energy drinks, like created logos for them, like mock-ups. And so it looked like a real company. It looked like they had like brochures and stuff. Yoga studios, dog walking, like electronic dog walking services, like just weird stuff. And so I was like, hey, just get really familiar with this. Like, you're going to do something with it. And they're like, okay, this is school. So I expect that we will be doing some sort of pitch in school. And I'm like, yeah, cool. So then we get in, we're like, all right, let's jump in these vans. We had these like school vans, and I drive over to University of Texas, and they are like, what is happening? And the competition was that whoever could convince the most amount of college students to want to work for their company, they would win this prize.
Oh, interesting.
So they had to go canvas around they had to walk up to people that they didn't know. And the whole thing was just getting out of your comfort zone. And so it wasn't technically like tied to a standard. This is why I don't like school standard. But those kids to this day, they still talk about that. Their parents still talk about it. I saw one of them a few weeks ago at South by Southwest with their dad, and he like stopped all of his friends and was like, you got it. This guy is the reason why she's so confident. And so I think, there's a lot of experiences that you can create to push kids in this like really, really wacky ways out of their comfort zones.
Yeah.
And if you need help finding those, I have lots of them already.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. I love that. So that's a great strategy. So again, strategy 3 was getting out of your comfort zone. Strategy 4 that I wanted to bring up was unlearning school. And this is kind of related to number 1, but the more that a young person sees failure as a problem, just like Matthew mentioned earlier, he's failed thousands of times, right? The more someone sees failure as a problem, the more they're going to run away from entrepreneurship, the more they're going to run away from risk, the more going to run away from creativity and trying things that haven't been done. And I think that is a really, really big really big problem. Here's the next one. And Mike, did I lose you, buddy? Are you still there?
I'm here, but I think my camera just froze.
Yeah, yeah. Well, either that or you're staying really still. Uh, there's this guy named Simon Squibb. I don't know if you've seen him on LinkedIn, but oh, you're back.
Okay, yeah.
There you go. But he
No.
he paid somebody $2,000 to quit their job and to work with him on building a job for the next month. And it's
that's awesome.
it's a really great story. But so there's this fourth element of what's needed, and there needs to be some kind of like support. And I think, Karen mentioned it, others may have mentioned as well, just the idea that if you were trying to become an entrepreneur solo, and in fact, there's even research on this, entrepreneurs who are, who have a co-founder are far more likely to be successful. But those that, like you said, that someone's in front of you, someone's behind you, and you got some folks to the left and right side of you as well. That is the support that's necessary for you to kind of get through those hurdles and get your reps. And that last one is really about getting your reps, which is what you mentioned.
That's right.
And that starts radically early. There's some 6-year-olds or 7-year-old who applied to the Youth Entrepreneur Award. And
I love it.
Yeah, and she submitted a video of her company, and I was like, girlfriend, you go. And what I found interesting though, Mike, a lot of the folks that have applied, particularly the younger kids, they're in a rural environment where I think they've got more space and more opportunity to explore. So I don't know. I think there's something in the urban environment that maybe discourages people.
Yeah, because I think it's what we talked about earlier. Is like when you're sort of inundated with big brands and big names, you have the wrong idea about what entrepreneurship is. So when you read it on the paper or you see it on a flyer, you're like, oh, that's not for me. I'm not.
Yep. Here's a quick comment. Hey, my friend, how are you? So she says, this is key. Kids as young as 7 and 8 are starting to develop severe anxiety around failure because we equate success to their score on tests. This to me is almost criminal. And thank you for bringing this up. We see it all over the place, and it's just terrible. It really teaches kids this fear that's going to stay lifelong. And I see adults who hate their job, and they can't imagine risking anything else. So thanks for that comment. And Elio joins up, says, love your 5 points. Please tell me that this is recorded so I can catch up with all of it later. It will be recorded on LinkedIn. It'd be perfect information to put you to sleep if you want to watch it sometime, Elio. So, but thanks for joining. Everett is also reinforcing what Assistant Principal Ortiz mentioned a moment ago. All right, so if these are the things that, and Mike, what would you add to this list?
I mean, this is like the perfect list. This reminds me of like Stephen A's list on First Take, ESPN First Take. Everybody always complains about his list. This is the perfect list. I actually think, like starting from 1 to 5, like redefining entrepreneurship, I think is really, really, really important.
Yeah.
And I'm always going to say unlearn school. I'm always going to say that because school, there's just like, I don't know. It is not helping very many traditional schooling. And then I will just emphasize getting reps, like as many reps as you can of that cycle. And with different stakes as well, I would say. So I feel like that's encompassed. I don't know if that necessarily needs to be another point, but like over time, the failure should mean something more. When I think about the first, like, this was not my first rep or go at this, but my first company that was venture backed.
Mm-hmm.
I will never forget the moment, the night before we're about to pitch this investor, this overseas investor, and we hadn't decided what we were going to ask him for yet. We didn't. And I remember, I'll never forget, they were like, we're going to ask $1 million for 3%. And I was like, are you kidding me? That's not going to work. And they were like, you got to believe, you got to believe. And I was like, look, I'm going to be proved wrong or right tomorrow, but either way, I'm going to learn something really important about this. So y'all say, I had co-founders, so I had the support. So I was like, if y'all think this is right, let's go. And the investor did it.
Wow.
And I was like, whoa. And like, I was like, okay. So like, I learned a lot in that moment of being wrong. And I had my brothers next to me to say, hey, like, this is us together through this. And I would not have learned that lesson. Like, I would not have gotten there if I had not been, if I hadn't taken the other steps. So,
Well,
yeah,
Elio adds communication and collaboration. I'm going to just shorten that just to
100%.
communication. That's one place that, particularly for some of the family, the boys. I'll just be more specific. Some of the black boys that I've worked with in the past. That's a place of real struggle. They've not mastered or they don't have command over the language. But frankly, in a short period of time through entrepreneurship, when they have to describe their product, when they have to ask for money, when they realize that if they don't use certain words in their conversation, the chances go way down. It gets they can pick it up so quickly, but it really does come with this. Thanks for that comment, Elio. And then lastly, and then we'll start to close this conversation out for today. Cheyenne talks about her son. And again, maybe this is the perfect place to end because this is such a common conversation, Mike. Her son struggles at school, but is very intelligent. He doesn't think he is because of school and how the teachers treat him, and he doesn't get good grades. What would be your advice for Cheyenne and for her son?
Well, Cheyenne, if you can pull your kid out of school, I would pull your kid out of school. Because you should know that there is an industrial system that works that way, and it's like you are not the only parent that's going through this right now. And so if you can pull your kid out of school, pull your kid out of school. There are people who are willing to help. I'm one of them that can help you like organize a school program or whatever. Matt's one of them as well.
Yep.
And if you can't, if you're in a situation where you're like, yo, I can't pull my kid out of school, then I think, and I know I've heard Matt say this on several occasions, like you should be one of the parents that every teacher and administrator hates, the one that is active and there all the time, the one that they see all the time.
Yeah, so I used to, Mike, you mentioned how, and again, we probably should, all right, we'll go a few more, you good for a couple more minutes, Mike?
Yeah.
I know you got little kids and you want to probably kiss them before they get to bed, but you mentioned that one of the groups that you worked with, they used to work in school, but now they're going direct to consumer. I did the same thing. I used to work in schools doing parent engagement and trying to help parents understand how to navigate the system and how to become an engaged parent. And I learned after 1,000, small cuts that the education system doesn't want engaged parents. It actually fights you. It discourages parents actively. And so my argument is if you're a parent in the traditional model, to Mike's point, look for every opportunity to find something else. Sometimes there are schools that are offering, unusual models. Take them, particularly homeschool models, et cetera, like that. But if you can't, get the heck out. And if you can't get out, or you feel like you can't, start the process of one being a pain in the ass to that system, and then two, every summer. And Mike offered this last week. Every summer, begin the process of teaching your kid how to become a self-learner. And Mike's got a homeschool curriculum that he uses with his kids. And so Cheyenne, if you ping Mike, I'm sure he's already offered to share that for free to anybody who wants it. And this summer is your chance to then practice how your child can start to learn in a way that's like these 7 things. These 7 things are not taught in school, and it's frustrating as all hell because kids end up running into a world where all these things are in high demand, but they don't have the skills for it. So Cheyenne says thank you, and again, hey, hang in there. I know it's tough. So listen, y'all, we're a little bit over. We're gonna keep this conversation going. We're gonna be back here next week. Look for an invite. I will send it to those who participated. Thanks so much for your conversation, Richard. Fransham is another guy who's a big youth advocate. He wants youth to be able to call their own shots and drive their own ship, and I'm all about that. He talks about, this will be the last comment and then we'll close it down. He talks about, he liked the discussion. He likes the emphasis on deschooling or unschooling. Unschooling School is a website that parents who want to get their kids out of school but can't might appreciate. So here it is, the website that could be helpful for you, Cheyenne. Richard, thanks for that link. I hope that's helpful for those that might be watching this either real time or afterwards. Richard, appreciate the work that you do. All right, y'all, we'll be back here next week. We'll be continuing this conversation about entrepreneurship and youth entrepreneurship. I'd love to, Mike, and maybe we can set this up, get a couple young people who are on the entrepreneurial journey as young people to come and talk about their stories. I tell you, these interviews I've had with these young entrepreneurs, it is mind-blowing, their experience before and after they get on this entrepreneurial train. So last word, Mike.
That idea just gave me I'm thinking of little kids, but I think the last word is to go create something. Like go encourage your kid to create something. Even if you have to set up the parameters and really push them to do it, get them to create something good or bad.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Go create some stuff. Great comment to end on. Mike, appreciate you. And we'll see you all next week, same time. Take care, y'all.
All right. Peace out.
See you, buddy. Bye.